Mama don't allow no architecture around here. Mama don't allow no architecture around here. Oh, I don't care what Mama don't allow, gonna draw mine modern anyhow. Mama don't allow no architecture around here.
Welcome back to US Modernist Radio, where we talk with people who enjoy, own, create, dream about, preserve, love, and hate modernist architecture, the most exciting and controversial buildings in the world. Show your support by visiting US Modernist's massive mid-century modern archives at usmodernist.org. Today, we welcome Johnny Örbäck from Sweden, a guy with a vision and a huge bill to pay. And now, the guys who rocked Palm Springs Modernism Week this year, George Smart and Frank King.
Oh, thank you. Sorry, guys. I'm distracted by the view here in Key West. As you might imagine, people are wearing next to nothing, and most of them are women. Okay. But we had even a better time in Palm Springs. Worked so hard sitting by the pool, as I am now in Key West. Listen, I got to say, the place we stayed and recorded at, it's called the Hotel Skylark. It is a hidden oasis. Doesn't look like much from the outside, but it's like, help me with this, George, TARDIS?
TARDIS.
TARDIS, yes. Yes, warning, Doctor Who reference. Hope you'll be part of our gang next year. Just join the newsletter at www.ncmodernist.org. Now, the important stuff, how we pay our bills. Support for US Modernist Radio comes from Sarah Sonk of Mod Homes Realty, a delightful single lady who loves Justin Timberlake, Amtrak down the California coast, and a good Pinot Noir. Also, Bob Newhart's early albums, and who doesn't, and holiday sweaters that light up.
Oh, I guess that's good enough for one more angel. Holiday sweaters that light up. Wow.
Sarah Sonk also loves modernist houses just as much as you and I do, and she's got the track record and the expertise to close your deal. You can reach her at modhomesrealty.com or 919-601-7339.
Thank you, Frank. Johnny Örbäck was about 47 when he had an idea. It was 1999, and as managing director of the HSB, a public housing agency in Malmö, Sweden, he decided to commission what would become the world's most unique housing project, the Twisting Tower. Malmö is across the water from Copenhagen, Denmark. And in just about a year, in 2000, the Øresund Bridge would open, linking those two countries by car and rail for the first time. One of the architects who competed for the bridge, but lost, was Santiago Calatrava from Spain. Calatrava, whose last name we found out is actually Valls, is an architect, structural engineer, sculptor, and painter, known for his wildly and brilliant creative buildings and bridges all over the world. Calatrava is famous for being an architectural genius, and he's also famous for enormous cost overruns. For example, in New York, the World Trade Center transportation hub had a $3.9 billion price tag, which was $2 billion over budget.
Whoa!
Oops. He's also perceived as a unique combination of mild-mannered and loftily arrogant. According to architect Peter Eisenman, best known for the Holocaust Memorial in Berlin, when Calatrava came to Yale, he got up after a long introduction. He said, "I'm going to draw." He had a camera over the drawing board. He turned on the music, and he drew for a whole hour. Then he turned the music off and walked off the stage. It's unusual, highly unusual, for architects to troll other architects. But in Calatrava's case, he has many critics inside and outside the profession. The New York Times documented every Calatrava financial disaster, including his truly brilliant City of Arts and Sciences in Valencia, Spain, that came in at 4 times the original price. But today, we welcome the visionary leader behind the Twisting Tower in Malmö, the tallest building in Scandinavia at 623 feet. Welcome, Johnny.
Thank you. Thank you. Happy to be in your show.
Oh, hey, we're glad to have you. So tell us, you were at an agency called the HSB in the 1990s, and what was your role there?
I was employed as a CEO from 1994.
What sort of housing had HSB built prior to this magnificent structure?
In Sweden, in the late 50s, beginning of the 60s, there was a lack of approximately 1 million apartments in Sweden. So what happened was that the government started very fast to build apartments. And before that, there had been very good architects and nice buildings. But what happened in the 60s and the 70s was that the skilled architects was not requested anymore. It was the big construction firms that employed their own architects. And you can say that it was the construction process that ruled the shape of the building. It should be fast and it should be very cheap. So a lot of very good architects, they changed work and did other things, especially the skilled architects. So in a way, you can say that in the 60s and the 70s, architecture nearly died in Sweden. And that was a pity, because before, in the 30s and the 40s and the 50s, there were a lot of good architecture, and there has been a lot of interesting buildings that have been built during that time. So I spent a lot of time looking into the 30s, the 40s, and the 50s and see what happened then and what were the good buildings and how did they think. That was my thought that I had when we started with turning torso or twisting torso.
The buildings you were talking about that were constructed in the 60s and 70s, describe to us what they were like. I mean, many people have a view of Russian housing being very square and drab and gray. Were they like that?
Yeah, in a way. What you can say is that inside the buildings, they were enormously good made. The rooms, the kitchens, everything had you thought about very much. So that was very good. But what I said before, that it was the industrial production that ruled everything. So outside, it is like rectangular boxes. And if you come to these areas, you can see that it was more important that the cars and the trucks could easily come through and build at both sides. So it stereotyped very, very much.
What inspired you to want to do something about this problem? Was there a moment when you went, damn it, I'm going to build a beautiful building?
No, there was an exhibition, a housing exhibition in Malmö, 2001. And I had marked a place where you could build 25 floors high. And I wanted to do something special. At that time, I didn't know what. I just know that the big crane that I use to big boats should go down. And I wanted to build something that shows that Malmö has changed from an industrial city to a city with a lot of education, a lot of commercial things and so on. The city had changed, and I wanted to do something about that. And I must say that it was just a coincidence, because Santiago Calatrava had been in Malmö, and he was one of the guys that tried to be the one that should make the Öresund bridge.
He tried out for the bridge, yes.
Yes, he was one of the guys that was trying to get that job.
That was the bridge from Copenhagen over to Malmö?
Yes, that's correct. And he didn't win that competition. But he had left a brochure at the city house in Malmö. And I saw that brochure, and that was a sculpture with 7 cubes. And I thought, could it be possible to make a building of that? So I contacted Santiago Calatrava. At that time, he had his office and house in Zurich.
In Zurich, okay.
Nowadays, he lives in Manhattan. And I contacted him, and to begin with, he was, what shall I say? He was not so very interested in doing this project. But I think that after a while, when we had talked and I went down there, and we talked about it, he started to be interested. But to begin with, he tried to give me other ideas.
What did he want you to do?
He knew the place, and he didn't think that a solitaire would be the best there. So he wrote a snake. You know, a snake that goes around and then it goes up in the middle.
Yes.
Like a cobra.
Yeah.
That was what he wanted me. So he would like to lower down the height of the building. And I told him I was not so very interested in that. And after a while, he started to send sketches to me. It was fax at that time. So my fax went red. And he really was engaged in this. That was how it started.
Did he wind up coming up with your original idea and present it as his own?
No. I tried to say to him that I'm interested in having a building that turns 90 degrees, because that was what the sculpture did. And I wanted the spine should turn against Denmark and Europe. That was my idea. So he started to construct that.
Because you were not only looking for a new building to house people, you were looking for a new landmark for Malmö.
In a way, yes. But at the same time, I was very interesting because, as I said before, I studied a lot what HSB had done in the 30s and the 40s. And it was a company that was in the front when we are talking about beautiful buildings and so on. HSB was really in the front. And, you know, the first children care was not done by the state or by a municipality. It was HSB that started that to begin with. And the Mangel Room and a lot of other things they started in HSB. So I also wanted that everything in the building could be very, very good for the people who should live there. If you look at the outside, you can say that people live in a work of art. But inside, there is a lot of facilities. It wasn't common in Sweden at that time.
Johnny, was your vision for it one where low-income people would live or the average citizen would live? I mean, what kind of person was going to be living in this tower?
We knew to begin with that it was people with a big wallet that would live there. But if you have looked at what has happened in Gothenburg, in Stockholm and in Malmö for the last 25 years, it has been very expensive. So a lot of the projects that starts in these cities, they are for rich people. But what happens is that rich people leave other apartments that are cheaper. So you can say that it's like a wheel. It works like that. So I haven't been so very much criticized that HSB built for rich people, because we went into other projects at the same time, and we were competing with other companies to build very cheap houses but with high quality. So we did both at the same time. Otherwise, I would have had a lot of critique at that time.
So you created movement in the market by...
I hope so.
How did you persuade? I mean, I assume you had a board of directors or other people. How did you persuade them to go along with hiring an international architect for a tower that had never been built before, and I presume also one of the most expensive things HSB had ever done?
Yes, of course. Even if we would have held the budget that we talked about in the beginning, it would have been the most expensive in HSB in Sweden. We had 17 meetings before we decided that let's go for it.
Wow.
So it was a lot of discussions. And you know what I did? I talked to 4 different firms, and I wanted them to count on what they thought should be, what it should cost. And they came rather close to each other, rather close. And so from the beginning, it was 7 cubes. We are talking about 5 flats in every cube. So from the beginning, it was 7 cubes, approximately 100 and...
about 140 units?
It's 140 units, yes. What I mean is that now the building is 9 cubes high. So it has gone up from 140, 150 meters to 190. We had to do that because when we made a model, the windows turned too much. So we had to put another 2 cubes more so that the windows didn't turn so much.
Okay.
Now they turn 1.4 degrees in each flat, so you don't feel bad about that.
Just out of curiosity, what was the original initial budget?
It was 850 million Swedish crowns.
So that is, do you know what that is in dollars?
It's 8.5 to 1 today.
So about $100 million roughly.
Yeah, a little bit more.
Yeah, a little bit more.
Yes.
Now, when did construction start? What year was that?
It was 2001. We started in February 2001.
And how did other organizations or agencies, did they get behind this? For instance, was the city of Malmö and the mayor and the government, were they rallying behind you in this project?
The city of Malmö, absolutely. The rest of the other firms, building companies and so on, I didn't hear much from them. But the city was good to work with.
The city was happy to get this landmark for their town?
Of course.
Of course.
Of course.
Because it's really great. You can see this tower from all over Sweden and Denmark on the other side. It's an amazing structure.
Yes, it is. It is. It's fantastic.
When did you first suspect the project might be going a wee bit over budget?
To begin with, it was small things. We had some problems with firms from other countries, as Spain and Germany, that should deliver things to the building.
Suppliers?
Yes, suppliers.
Okay.
That was the first problem. And then we had talked to people who are working with weather and so on. And so we made from that an estimation about how many days we couldn't work on the building because of the weather. But the weather went much more bad than it used to be. But when it really happened with the economy, that was the terror attack at World Trade Center.
How did that affect things?
You know, journalists started to talk to me. They tried to reach Calatrava, and we had talked, Calatrava and I said that the reinforcement and the concrete, it's enough. We don't need anything more. It's not the same construction at all as World Trade Center. We agreed that that's enough. But then journalists started to talk to some of the consultants that we used, and they weren't used to talk to journalists, and they hesitated and so on. So after a month or something like that, when people who should live in the building that we have had contact with started to drop off because they were unsure, I had only one thing to do, because then we had started the building and we were coming up from the ground. And I told Calatrava, there will be a stop in the building, and you have to rewrite. And we have to put in more reinforcement and more concrete. And that costed money.
And so the whole question was whether it would withstand the impact of a jet airliner.
Yeah. Today, it's so stable. It wasn't necessary to do it, but it costed about 200 and 250 million Swedish crowns.
Which is another $30 million.
Yeah, approximately, yes.
Did this seem strange to you, Johnny? I mean, the 9/11 incident in New York was a very tragic thing, but did you feel like this was silly to be reinforcing a building thousands of miles away just on the off chance that another airliner would go into it?
Yes, I was enormously confused. I tried to talk to the journalist, and I told them that you can take anyone that is a consultant, and you can come to me and we can have a talk. We can talk about the building, and he can say to you, is this stable or not? But they never did. They wasn't interested in that. They was interested in what they could write in the papers. And I think they were very happy afterwards because they thought they was right, because I started to put in more concrete and more reinforcement.
So they thought they had you.
It was confusing.
So there's 250 million more Swedish krona over budget. But ultimately, the project was, about $1 million over budget?
In total, from the budget, it is 750 million Swedish crowns over the budget.
750 million Swedish crowns.
Yeah.
So that's another...
It's nearly a double.
Double, okay. So your $100 million building became a $200 million building.
Yes.
And how are your board of directors and other people feeling about this now?
Today, if you are talking to HSB, which I do, I have the best connections with HSB today. Both people in the board and the CEO and so on, they are very proud of the building. And the economy, HSB's economy, was at that time, and still is, very, very good.
But were they mad at the time about the budget?
Yes, the board, they were attacked from journalists and the people who lived in our buildings. HSB is very big in this region. In the region around Malmö, about 30% of all people live in an HSB apartment. So HSB has a lot of apartments around in this area. And the board was attacked very hard about this because they were afraid what happens to HSB's economy and so on. So after a while, I left as a CEO and only worked with Turning Torso. But, the pressure was very hard on the board, so I had to leave everything just before it was ready.
So you left HSB, the agency, and worked for the building itself?
Yes.
Okay. What was your role with the building?
My role was to keep everything together, and I employed a guy that was very good at the economy, so I had him beside me all the time, and I led the board meetings for Turning Torso, and I took over all the contacts with Santiago Calatrava because there were a lot of discussions between our people and Calatrava's people, so I went very often to Calatrava and we solved things together without having a lot of other employed people who should talk about this. We did that together and it worked very well.
And when was the building finished?
It was finished in 2005. So the first people that moved in was in November 2005.
And does the HSB still own it today?
Yes, they own it.
Okay. So they're still renting out these, I guess they're flats or apartments?
That's our apartments. They rental apartments, yes.
Okay. Now, what happened? I was reading that in 2007, they tried to throw you in jail?
Yes.
What was that all about?
Yeah.
Are you calling us from prison? Do you need us to get you out?
Is it a real cell phone?
There were, at the same time, I did a lot of business with real estate for HSB. And I engaged brokers who should help because at that time it was very, very difficult to sell buildings, real estate, and also to buy. So I used people who should help me with that. And I didn't want that people should see HSB as someone who buys and sells and buys and sells and buys and sells. So what I did when someone will sell buildings and real estate, they put good buildings and bad buildings in a package. So I started a separate company where the buildings that HSB didn't want to take care of, we put them there. It had not HSB in its name. And then we sold them. And we kept the good buildings. And something happened there. I don't know where it came from, but it was people that was suspicious. So I was in breach of trust regarding real estate business.
Yeah, they call it conflict of interest over here. Yes?
Yes, it's the same. And it took 3 years before I was free from this. And I tried through my lawyer to come to court as fast as possible, but it took time. It took time and it took time and it took time. So that was the problem.
Was this in Swedish court?
Yes, in Swedish court, yes.
Did they actually put you in jail, or were you allowed to walk around and defend yourself?
No. I was free all the time. But, it's not so easy to work when people don't know. Are you to trust or are you not to trust? So it was 3 years like garbage.
Like 2007 to 2010, roughly?
Yeah.
And we should note that in the appellate court of Sweden, Johnny and a couple of other people who were involved in this were acquitted of all charges.
Yes.
Yeah. All right.
So are you going to write a book, Johnny, called Twisted Justice, maybe? For
I have thought about it.
It's a great story.
Yes.
Well, it has a great ending.
Yeah.
Yes, it has.
Johnny, did you get to live in one of these apartments?
Yes, I did that. I moved in 2005. Then I lived there up to 2009. I had an apartment on the 36th floor.
And how many floors are there?
There are 54. It's 190 meters high.
Okay.
I've been to the building, and it's really amazing.
Yes, it's a beautiful building.
And I think initially it was pretty much by itself in its little neighborhood, but other buildings have filled in around it since construction.
Yeah, when this area will be completed, there will live around 25,000 people. Today, I think there is around 10 maybe, and when we built Turning Torso, there were about 2,000 apartments, something like that.
The building has won several awards. The 2005 Gold Emporis Skyscraper Award, and an organization I'd never heard of before, but it sounds kind of fun, the Council on Tall Buildings and Urban Habitat.
I haven't heard that either.
In August of 2015, the building was the winner of the 10-year award from the Council on Tall Buildings. Which makes me wonder, is there a council on short buildings?
Yeah, right. A council on basements.
That's quite a council.
Perhaps you should be on that council.
Johnny, do people, now that the building has been up for 12 years or so, has there been any impact on other buildings in Malmö? Have others wanted to build something maybe not quite so tall, but modernist like this building is?
Yeah, there is a couple of buildings done, and they would never have had the possibility to build like that if not Turning Torso was there. And if you read newspapers from Gothenburg and Stockholm, every day they discuss something that they shall build in their city. So, and you can go to Helsingborg, a smaller city. You can go to Sundsvall, a smaller city. All over the country, they are discussing different buildings, but they shall at least be 20-25 floors.
When the Twisting Tower was finished, was the reception generally positive in the press and among government officials?
I think it took, because people saw how many other persons came there. They wanted to come into the building. They took pictures. There came buses from all over the country and from other countries too. So people started to be very proud. And when the prizes started to come in and the newspapers started to write very positive because they interviewed people that lived in the building and they were very happy. So it turned from being negative to being positive very, very fast.
Wow.
Now, for the bad news, the building is not open to the public. You can't visit it on the inside. But I was wondering, Johnny, do any of the owners offer like an Airbnb option that you can book a unit in the building for a holiday or something?
Yes, you can.
Ah, great.
You have to have contact with me or with someone that lives in the building, because if they book it, then it's okay.
Okay.
So tell me when you are coming.
Well, as a matter of fact, Johnny, I am bringing 25 people to Copenhagen and Malmö in May of 2019.
Oh, okay.
We come every 3 years, and we come over and visit the tower and explore Malmo. We come over on the train from Copenhagen. That's a very nice ride across the bridge.
Yeah.
Just for our listeners, because I realize not a lot of people have gotten to travel to Copenhagen or Malmo, tell them about the significance of that bridge going up, because it was a big deal for Scandinavia.
Yes, it was. The first bridge that was sketched in that place was in 1895, I think. That was the first time. And it was made in wood. So they really wanted to have the bridge there. And then there has been a lot of discussions and different way how to build it, and should it be a tunnel or should it only be a bridge and so on. So that discussion has been for a long time. For Malmö, what happened during this time, around millennium, there was a completed university in Malmö, and the bridge was built, and Turning Torso came at the same time. So people in Malmö became very proud of their city. It wasn't like that before. But then they became very proud. And the bridge has meant a lot for the connection between Denmark and Sweden. And there is a lot of people going from Sweden to Denmark, working there. And there is a lot of Danish people living on the Swedish side. When we built Turning Torso, 20% of the people who moved in came from Denmark.
Wow. Right.
So there is a lot of people from Denmark living in Sweden.
So just as a geographic reference point for people who may not know the area, this is the point where Denmark and Sweden are maybe just a few miles apart, correct?
Yes, it's 18 kilometers.
Right. I was a child. We went to Copenhagen and we took the ferry over to probably Malmo for lunch.
Yes.
And but this bridge when was the bridge completed?
It was completed in 2000.
Okay.
It was their Millennium Project.
Yeah, you can say that.
And just as a trivial note, if any of you out there are into Danish crime drama,
I am.
You'll want to get the TV series on DVD called The Bridge, which was...
Yes.
This TV show is just fabulous. It is so much better than a lot of American procedurals in that the suspense just builds over the time. And I'll give you a little sense of the plot. It starts off where a body is found on the bridge at the exact point between Denmark and Sweden. So half the body's in one country and half the body's in another.
That's hard work.
And to top it off, the body has been cut in half already.
Oh, my Lord.
So this adds to the whole drama, and you can pick this up. I think it's on Netflix, and you can order the DVDs and things like that.
I got to go.
Yes,
I got to go watch that.
Yes, you can.
So, Johnny, thank you so much for joining us today, all the way from Malmo. It's really been a pleasure to talk with you and learn about this wonderful architectural adventure you went through. And on behalf of architecture fans everywhere, I want to thank you for having the courage to put that building together.
Thank you very much, and excuse me for my lack of words, but it was interesting to be in your show.
You have plenty of words. You have the best words.
Yeah, we'll take those. We'll take those. We've heard others. Those are good.
Yeah.
Hey, thanks for listening. US Modernist Radio is underwritten by Sarah Sonk, your real estate angel for modernist houses. You can reach her at 919-601-7339, where I believe she's probably at this very moment binge watching The Bridge. Okay, take us out, Tom.
Visit usmodernist.org for more information about today's guest. US Modernist Radio is produced by Soundtracks Recording Studios in Raleigh, North Carolina. Our theme song was performed by George Smart and Robinson Earl. Cindy Stratton researches guests in her pajamas from a secret underground bunker.
Yes, very deep in the bunker.
US Modernist Radio is a production of North Carolina Modernist Houses, a nonprofit educational archive for the documentation, preservation, and promotion of modernist residential design. I'm Tom Giles. I'll shortly be sending Frank and George another invoice, this time for 1 billion kroner. Now, if that check doesn't bounce, we'll be back in 2 weeks with another edition of US Modernist Radio.